If you're over 60 and you've ever heard a strange sound come from your body, maybe a sharp pop in your head, a sudden high-pitched ring in your ears, or a wheeze that shows up while you're sitting down, don't ignore it. These aren't just odd quirks of aging. In some cases, they're your body's only early warning sign before something serious happens. I want to talk to you about 3 specific sounds that your body might be making. And the third sound we'll cover, it's one that nearly everyone over 60 has experienced, but almost no one realizes how dangerous it could actually be. Before we get into it, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Let's get started. The first sound you need to watch out for is one that many seniors dismiss because it doesn't seem serious on the surface, but it can be. Wheezing, especially when it happens while resting or during light activity. We're not talking about wheezing after you've sprinted up a hill or had a bad cold. We're talking about wheezing that shows up while you're sitting in your chair, lying in bed, or walking calmly through your home. Wheezing sounds like a soft whistle or tight crackling sound when you breathe, especially on the exhale. And if that's happening while you're relaxed, or worse, while you're trying to sleep, it could be pointing to something happening in your lungs or even your heart. Here's what most people don't realize. Wheezing in older adults isn't always a lung issue. In fact, one of the most common hidden causes is something called congestive heart failure. Now, I know that sounds scary, but let's break it down. Congestive heart failure doesn't mean your heart is stopping. It means your heart isn't pumping blood as strongly or as efficiently as it used to. And when that happens, fluid can back up, especially into your lungs. That fluid creates pressure and resistance, making your airways narrower. That narrowing is what causes the wheezing sound. A lot of people experience this when lying flat. You might feel short of breath while trying to fall asleep. Maybe you find yourself needing extra pillows to sleep upright. Maybe you wake up gasping for air or needing to sit up just to catch your breath. That's not just aging. That could be your heart quietly asking for help. Now, there are other causes too. One is late onset asthma, which can actually start for the first time in your 60s or 70s. Unlike childhood asthma, it doesn't always come with obvious triggers. It may sneak up during the night or when you're exposed to things like cold air or dust. And then there's COPD, or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, which often affects former smokers or people with long-term lung exposure. That's a more gradual kind of breathing issue, but wheezing is one of the early symptoms. So how do you tell the difference? Here's one simple clue. If you get out of breath doing things that never used to bother you, like walking from the bedroom to the kitchen or talking while climbing stairs, and that breathlessness is accompanied by wheezing, don't ignore it. Also, if you've started noticing swelling in your feet or ankles, unexpected weight gain, or fatigue that hits harder than it used to, those might all be connected. Taken together, these signs often point to early stage heart failure, or at the very least circulation issues. And here's another important point. Wheezing that gets worse while lying flat often means the problem is coming from the heart, not just the lungs. If any of this sounds familiar to you, bring it up at your next appointment. Your doctor can check your heart function, run simple tests, and figure out if your lungs or circulation are to blame. The bottom line is this: wheezing isn't just a noise, it's a signal. And the earlier you catch it, the better your chances are of getting ahead of whatever's causing it. Now let's move on to the second sound, and this one is even more common. In fact, you might have heard it today. You might even hear it while you're watching this video. That sound is a ringing, buzzing, or hissing noise in your ears. Most people call it tinnitus. You might notice it at night when the house is quiet, or in the morning when you're just waking up. Some people hear it as a sharp tone. Others describe it as a low hum, like a distant engine. And most people just chalk it up to aging. But this sound can actually be a much bigger deal than most realize. Now let's talk about the most important sound of all. This one doesn't come from your chest. It doesn't echo in your ears. Instead, it feels like it comes from deep inside your head. And what happens next might shock you. This is the sound that people remember for years. A loud pop, a sudden crack, a strange whooshing sensation, almost like something burst or shifted behind your eyes, and then silence, or pressure, or a strange fuzziness like the air got thick. If that's ever happened to you even once, don't brush it off, because this sound could be the first and only sign that something serious is happening in your brain. In many cases, people who describe this sound later discover they were experiencing the early moments of a mini stroke, a small aneurysm, or a dangerous pressure spike inside their skull. And the scariest part? It often doesn't hurt. There's no pain, no drama, just a brief noise, a strange feeling, and then it passes. But that doesn't mean it's harmless. Let's rewind a bit. As we get older, the blood vessels in our brain can start to weaken. They become less flexible, more prone to damage, and sometimes a tiny section of a blood vessel begins to bulge. This is called an aneurysm. It can sit there silently for years, but one day it might leak, or worse, burst, and when it does, that sudden pop or internal whoosh is the only warning you'll get. It doesn't always lead to a full-blown stroke immediately, but it does mean something is changing inside your brain, and fast. Now here's where most people go wrong. They write it off. They say it must have been their jaw, or their sinuses, or maybe they just moved too quickly. But this is exactly what makes the sound so dangerous. dangerous. It's easy to explain away. So how do you tell if it's serious? Start with this. Where did the sound come from? If it felt like it came from your jaw or ear, it might be something minor like TMJ or sinus pressure. But if it felt like it came from deep inside your head, not near your face or neck, but truly internal, that's different. Then ask yourself, did it come with anything else? Any strange pressure, vision changes, a flash of confusion, dizziness? If any of those followed the sound, you may have just experienced something your doctor absolutely needs to know about. And what you're about to hear next might actually save your life. Doctors have a name for this kind of warning sign, a sentinel bleed. It's a small, early leak from an aneurysm. Not enough to cause major damage yet, but enough to create that pop, that whoosh, that wave of pressure. And if it goes unaddressed, a larger rupture could happen days, weeks, or even hours later. Other times, this sound may come from a sudden spike in blood pressure. It can happen if you stand up too quickly, bend over, or feel a wave of stress. The blood vessels in your brain suddenly constrict or expand, and your body reacts with that strange internal noise. Again, not always dangerous, but definitely not something to ignore. There's also a rarer possibility, arterial dissection. This is when the inner lining of a blood vessel tears slightly. It's more common than most people think, and especially risky if you have high cholesterol, a history of smoking, or poorly controlled blood pressure. Now, if you've already experienced something like this and nothing came of it, that's good news. But it's also your opportunity to stay ahead of whatever might be brewing beneath the surface, because the next time it happens, it might not end the same way. This is the moment where a lot of people stop listening. They think, well, I'm fine now. But ask anyone who's had a stroke or aneurysm rupture and they'll tell you they felt something odd right before it happened. They just didn't think it was important. So here's what you do. If you ever hear that pop, that shift, that deep internal sound, and especially if it comes with pressure, confusion, or any change in how you see or feel, don't wait. Call your doctor. Go to urgent care. Let someone know. Because when it comes to your brain, every minute counts. And just before we wrap this up, let's talk about something a little more hopeful. A small step you can take, starting today, that may actually help protect your brain and reduce your risk of these scary events. It's simple, it's natural, and yes, it's backed by science. We're talking about beetroot juice. This bright, earthy drink isn't just some trendy health craze. It's been studied in actual clinical trials, and what researchers found might surprise you. Beets are rich in something called nitrates. Your body converts those nitrates into nitric oxide, a molecule that helps relax and widen your blood vessels. When your vessels are more relaxed, blood flows more easily, especially to critical areas like your brain. In one study published in the journal Nitric Oxide, older adults who drank beetroot juice every day showed increased blood flow to the frontal lobes of their brains. That's the part responsible for memory, focus, and decision-making. Better blood flow means better cognitive function, and yes, potentially even a reduced risk of stroke, vascular dementia, and cognitive decline. So how do you make it? Just peel and chop 1 or 2 medium beets. Toss them into a blender with water or a splash of apple juice if you prefer it sweeter. Add a little lemon or ginger if you like a bit of a kick. Blend, strain if needed, and drink it fresh. If raw beet juice is too strong for your stomach, you can lightly steam the beets first. It reduces the nitrate content slightly, but still delivers solid benefits and goes down a little smoother. Try drinking it first thing in the morning, 3 or 4 times a week. It's not a miracle cure, but it's a gentle, powerful way to help your body stay strong and sharp as you age. Now, before we finish, I want to leave you with something important. These sounds, wheezing, ringing, popping, they aren't just noise. They're your body trying to speak to you. And the biggest mistake we make as we age is assuming we can ignore what our body tells us because it's probably nothing. But sometimes it's not nothing. Sometimes that little sound is your body's only cry for help. And the people who hear it, who really hear it, are the ones who catch problems early, get treatment in time, and stay around longer for the people who love them. So the next time your body speaks, don't brush it off. Listen close. You just might save your own life. Let's expand on the tinnitus section since it's one of the most relatable symptoms for your audience. Tinnitus might seem harmless, even common, but when it starts to affect your daily life, your sleep, your concentration, your peace of mind, it deserves attention. Some people hear it as a soft buzz. Others describe it as a high-pitched squeal or static-like sound. It can come and go or linger all day. For some, it's background noise. For others, it's maddening. But here's what makes tinnitus particularly tricky. It's not always just about your ears. Tinnitus can be the result of hearing loss, sure, but it's also linked to blood pressure, circulation, and even neurological health. In fact, in people over 60, one of the most common underlying causes of tinnitus is reduced blood flow to the inner ear, and that in itself can point to bigger health issues. In some cases, tinnitus can be the first sign of hypertension or high blood blood pressure. The pulsing sound some people hear, especially if it seems in rhythm with their heartbeat, is called pulsatile tinnitus, and it's closely tied to vascular health. Let's say you're sitting quietly in the evening, and suddenly you hear a pulsing beat in your left ear. It sounds almost like a tiny drum, or like your heart is thumping inside your head. That's not something to ignore. It could mean your blood vessels are under pressure or narrowing, and if that pressure isn't controlled, it could lead to a stroke or a burst blood vessel in the brain. Even more concerning, sudden onset tinnitus that occurs in just one ear can sometimes signal a tumor pressing on your auditory nerve, something called an acoustic neuroma. It's rare, yes, but it happens, especially in adults over 60. That's why it's so important to look at the whole picture when tinnitus shows up. Is it new? Is it getting worse? Does it come with dizziness, trouble walking, or hearing loss? If so, you need to let your doctor know because it could be a sign of something far more serious than aging. Even without a serious underlying cause, tinnitus can impact your mental health in ways many people don't expect. It's linked to higher rates of anxiety, depression, and insomnia. Why? Because when your brain is constantly focusing on a noise it can't turn off, it creates stress, and stress in turn makes the ringing worse. This becomes a vicious cycle for many people. The noise causes stress, the stress increases the noise, and sleep gets harder and harder to come by. The good news is there are things that help. Sound therapy is one of the most effective. That means listening to soft music, white noise, or even nature sounds, especially when falling asleep. This helps retrain the brain to stop zeroing in on the ringing. There's also cognitive behavioral therapy, which teaches the brain to respond differently to tinnitus. Studies show it can significantly reduce how bothersome the sound feels, even if it doesn't eliminate it completely. Some people also benefit from low-dose anxiety medication or natural calming herbs like lemon balm, chamomile, or magnesium supplements. And for those with underlying hearing loss, hearing aids can not only restore sound, but help reduce the prominence of tinnitus by rebalancing how your brain processes noise. If you found this video helpful, consider subscribing for more straight-to-the-point health info made for real people over 60. And if you've ever experienced any of these sounds yourself, let us know in the comments. Your story could help someone else get the help they need. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out the next video on the screen right now for more health tips.